Hello, everybody. Welcome to the True Grimaldi Podcast. We appreciate you being here today. We have a great show, as always. We have a very special guest with us today. We have Metin Pekin. How are you doing? Thanks for being here.
Very well, and thank you for the invite. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. So we were just chatting beforehand. That's why I was like, let's go live a few minutes early. So you're from the UK originally. You were saying you're from.
I'm originally. My parents are Turkish, but they've emigrated to Europe early on. So I'm British.
That's awesome. What did you see a lot of cultural differences between the United States and like the UK, for example?
Well, no, because I think you're basically English. You've just
same church, different pew, right?
Yeah. So no, I think I've been to America, to various cities, and I love America. I love the culture. I love the democracy, the system. Nothing's ever perfect, but great country. And I'm very patriotic about Britain. Again, it's a cradle of democracy. We're not perfect. No system is ever perfect, but we work towards that. We work towards a better system that represents everybody.
Yeah, amen to that.
That puts power in the hands of the public, not the elite, is my objective.
Amen. So, in Breaking Democracy's Chains, your book, you talk about the illusion of choice and the theater of participation. Can you kind of give some detail on that and what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. Good question. Let's start off with gatekeeping that we currently face. So we are divided into two sections in the society, two major groups, two major sections, Republicans and Democrats. And unfortunately, we are seeing one another almost as existential threat, because there are a lot of people who lean left and say, if Trump wins, or we're saying if Trump wins, we're going to lose democracy, we're going to become X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth. And vice versa. And as the Republicans then say, well, if the left wins, if the Kamala Harris gets, whatever it is, we're going to have X, Y, and Z. Now,
right, the world's going to end.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. But what we forget is that we're citizens of the same nation. We are going to have differences of opinion, and we've got to kind of debate things in a civilized way and respect one another. So in Breaking Democracy's Chains, I see this problem as being caused by the political parties. And this is what I mean by illusion of choice. So we have gatekeeping. We have gatekeeping because you and I, we go to the polling booth. What is the choice that we have? It's a curated choice. It's not a real choice.
Correct.
It's not a real choice, because if you look at your representatives, 95% of the incumbents gets re-elected.
Right. And
so
and when you run against an incumbent, the chances are against you, really.
Absolutely.
If they did any kind of good job,
Yeah. Well, the thing is, 45% of Americans are not happy. They don't identify as Democrats or Republicans. They identify as independents. And that concludes that they're not happy with the system.
Right.
The system is not delivering. It's not delivering for the Republicans. It's not delivering for the Democrats. Because what parties do, they bundle together so many different issues.
Yeah, the uniparty, as they call it here in the States.
Correct. Yeah. So many issues are bundled together, and we are asked to choose between those two bundles. And that's not democracy. That is not democracy. Because it's like if I was to use an example to get the point across, It's like you're going to a restaurant and saying you've got a full choice, but you've got a curated menu. It's a fish restaurant. My friend, I want a burger. I want a steak. Well, no, you can have a fish. You can have salmon. You can have haddock. You can have cod or whatever it is.
Right.
No. I don't eat seafood. I need to have a steak. I want my steak. So that's what we get with the parties. We don't get a real choice. We get a curated choice. Right. Now, the problem doesn't end there. We've got a bigger problem. And that bigger problem is influence of money in politics.
Right. Yeah. The dark money has been crazy.
Exactly.
And you don't know where it's coming from. So it could be anybody. It could be a foreign power that hates our guts and wants to create problems.
100%. Yeah. 100%. So what happens? This money, it finances think tanks, these organizations that actually draw up legislation and policies outside the government. And those are then brought in for our representatives to vote on.
Right.
But guess what? Our representatives are not free. They belong to a party. There's a party whip. They're told which way to vote.
Right. Or if they're in the United States, they got so much blackmail on them that, they're owned by somebody. I think it was Robin Williams said back in the day that he wished politicians would wear jackets like they do at NASCAR, because then at least you would know who owns them.
Yeah.
All their sponsors.
Yeah. Well, there we are. So you've got three levels of gatekeeping. You've filtered candidates. You've drafted the policies with loopholes for the class that's financing it. And then you've got the party machine to whip the representatives to vote in a certain way. Now, I want to take you back to the American founding fathers, who were great visionaries.
Absolutely.
Thomas Jefferson.
They were all young too. They were all like in their.
Oh, absolutely. But they had prophecies. They were geniuses.
One was Ben Franklin. I think he was like in his 30s or something. Maybe, I think he was older than that. But
exactly. Yes. But Thomas Jefferson famously said, "If I could not go to heaven but with a party, I would not go there at all."
That's amen to that. Yeah, they both have. Any party is going to get corrupt when you're in power.
But this is my point. That's the whole theme of the book. Just to reinforce that point, John Adams also said there is nothing which I dread so much as division of the republic into two big parties. And guess what we have now? We have exactly that. And this was 250 years ago, don't forget.
Right.
So the theme of the essence of the book is that we relied on political parties and we needed them 250 years ago because it was a different era.
Right.
There was no internet, there was no television, there was no radio, information was not available, communication wasn't instant, there was only few presses. You needed the pamphlets to organize people, to motivate people, to have democracy to function. Right. You needed these organizations to give cues and simplify it.
Well, that's one of the big things, too, and why it's so hard in the States even today, is that to have because that the Democrats and the Republicans, they're both very well organized. So if you want to, if you're going to be a national candidate, if you run with, one of the mainstream parties, they're going to make sure that you're on every ticket in every state, where you run into a lot of these, independent candidates that start running into problems where maybe they get on the ballot in Texas and here and here and here, but they don't here and here. And, maybe that's something that needs to be a little bit more simplified to let better candidates into the pool, right?
100% agree. 100% agree. And that's what I propose in the book as well. So I'm just going to turn my emails off because it's keep buzzing.
Oh,
let me just turn that off so that it doesn't buzz in the background.
You're fine.
Okay, so we're here. So sorry about the distraction.
Here,
so we live in a different era. Information is abundantly available. Communication is instant. And technology is advancing at a pace that is making us all dizzy.
Right.
So we no longer need parties. We do no longer need parties. We need to discuss why we need parties. We need true representation. Right. We need to go back to the basics and open the thing to debate and say, why do we need political parties? Because political parties are responsible for so many ills of democracy, for so much corruption.
Right. I agree.
And they are ignoring the will of the people. Democracy means power rests with the people. And those who govern in our names are accountable to the people.
So
but in reality,
I had heard back in the day, and I apologize to interrupt, but I had heard that they had said, that Benjamin Franklin had actually stated that he did not want a simple democracy as a government because he didn't think it was right that 51% would rule over the 49.
That is exactly true.
So you have kind of a representative, class, for example, representation. But I was thinking about this too, and let me throw some numbers out at you here, okay? Sure. Do you, sure. And this is one of the things too, right? So we find that most of these countries that have a lot of political unrest, right? They have more than one party.
Yep.
You notice this. So let me just throw this out at you, and I wanted to make sure my numbers were right here, if I can find it. So roughly, right, you have 50% of the population that comes out to vote in an election, right? It's traditionally it's around 50%.
Yeah.
And so then you have, traditionally, it go 50-50 Democrat or Republican, plus or minus,
1 or 2%. Yeah.
Right. For Dem or Republican. So when you add a third party in there, you're no longer at 50-50. Then you're at 33.3.
Yeah.
Which, if you take half of that number is actually 15%. So you have 15% of the population choosing the ruler for the 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely.
That's kind of the argument for the two-party system, is that you would have, with a third party, you would have a smaller group that would be deciding those massive things like who's going to be, commander in chief, for example.
Yeah. No, fair point. And let's unpack that. Now, I'm guessing you're not advocating a third party here. Am I?
I mean, I would love to see a third party. I was just throwing numbers out because I think
that's okay. One of the so let's have a look at this. Look, you put quite a few important points in there, and I need to kind of break them up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I need to break that up. So we have countries with more than two parties. We have it in the UK, and we have Lib Dems, we have Labour, we have Conservative. Now we have Reform. We have the Greens and so on and so forth. And there has been times where Conservatives, neither Labour nor Conservatives had won the majority. So the biggest party had to form a coalition with the Lib Dems. It was a disaster. And we have it in Israel, for instance. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu's party is not got outright majority, so they have to form a coalition with another party. So what happens then? To keep the coalition going, the minor party, the smaller partner in the coalition, has disproportionate influence on policies. Because alternative is the government will collapse, it'll be general election again. Right. So would I recommend a third party? And would it be more representative? Absolutely not. Because we know that small group will have disproportionate influence on the outcomes. As you've said, it comes down to about 15% of people, in some cases 5% of people, right. deciding how we are governed. Right. And that's dangerous. That's not right. Now, you've also mentioned a very good point, because the founding fathers didn't just go for democracy. They went for a republic.
Right. constitutional democratic
Correct.
republic, as they
Absolutely.
they like to put them all together.
Yeah. So what they have intended is that no one group will become a dictatorship over others, over smaller groups, and that's why we've got separation of powers. So executive has certain powers, Congress has others, and judiciary has other powers to check for checks and balances, and then media supposed to be the fourth estate to hold power to account.
Right.
So you have a great democracy, but the founding fathers had learned from England and the rest of the Europe how the parties were becoming corruptible and looking after these interests. And that's why they were anti-parties, anti-factions. But given the constraints of that era, they had to put up with them. They naturally evolved. But we no longer have to. So we need to go back to the intention that the founding fathers had and have a better system. Now, I want to make sure that I've covered all the points you said. We discussed about the third party. We don't need it. And we discussed about we need to make a note on the turnout. You said 50% turnout, even two-party systems.
Right.
They only got 25% of the mandate.
And I would guess if you have more candidates, there's probably less enthusiasm about any one of them. So you probably have even less turnout, maybe.
Well, that's an important point. Let's actually, that's a good point to kind of move on to the proposed system, because if I can just say in breaking democracy's chains, freeing and fortifying democracy against hidden capture, because I believe democracy is captured in a hidden way, then we can look at an alternative system. So what is that alternative? If we take parties out, what do we put it in its place?
Right.
So here is what we propose. We have in the United States, we have 435 representatives, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So 435 constituencies. Imagine for a moment, go along with me, imagine for a moment that we elect every one of those independently, without a party label.
Right.
No Democrat, no Republican, just representatives from the grassroots in our community, in our constituency. Okay. Now, to qualify, each candidate to become a serious contender will get certain number of signatures from the voters, whether that's 0.5%, 0.1%, whatever the number is, so that we don't get every Tom, Dick, and Harry to say, I want to be a representative. Well, okay, prove that you've got some following here,
right,
and then you get onto the ballot paper. Now, imagine now we have a government website for each constituency that lists all the serious contenders, and that's going to become a manageable number, because to get 0.5% of the voters' signatures, it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 people. 5 representatives. And against each name, we have their top 10 pledges, like the top 10 commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not do this, you name it. So we have their top 10 pledges. On immigration, I do not want any immigrants. On abortion, I do not want abortion. I've got Republican values, I've got conservative values, I've got democratic values, I'm a liberal, whatever it is. These candidates put their pledges down so you and I know exactly who we are voting for.
Right.
So now imagine 435 of those independent representatives are in the House. They will then decide who becomes our president. Now, anybody under the Constitution that qualifies under the current system, whatever the criteria is,
got to be 35 years old, natural born citizen.
Correct. So whatever that is, they will put their names forward to become a serious contender. They will need a number of representatives to support them. So instead of the money deciding who's going to run, or a party deciding that Kamala Harris is going to represent them. No, let's have a look at, let public decide, our representatives decide who they want to support. And don't forget, those are hopefully educated people who understand politics and who can discuss and understand their policies. So once we have all these candidates that's got popular support, let's say we've got half a dozen of those, through a round of debates and round of voting by our representatives, we narrow the list down to 2 finalists. So for a presidential candidate now, we've got 2 finalists. They choose their running mates, and they put their agenda together, and they go to a general election. So like now, under the American Constitution, they go to general election, and people will vote for candidate A or candidate B.
Right.
So the winning ticket with their running mates becomes the executive.
Right.
The runner-up is mandated by people to become the opposition leader, the minority leader, or whatever you want to call it. So here we've got the structure, organization, and independent representatives. So now, under this current system, let's say I'm a Republican, and my representative is betraying me. He's behaving in the way that I don't want him, or I don't want her to behave.
Right.
For me to punish her or him, it means inviting the Democrats in. Because if I don't vote for my party, the other party comes in. It's strategic voting.
Right.
Under the proposed system, I can get rid of that candidate and put another Republican in there without the fear of letting the Democrats in, for instance, and vice versa.
Right. That pendulum never stops in the middle. The political pendulum, it goes one way, and then depending on how things go, it goes.
But at the moment, we've got a problem, because at the moment it's all politics. Why do we have government lockdowns and whatever it is? Why? It's all political. It's not in the best interest of the country.
Right.
Patriotism is to the country, not to a party. Correct. Parties are not part of Constitution.
It's like we want allegiance. One nation under God, indivisible.
Exactly.
But we don't say that in classes anymore in the States. They took that out because of the under God part. But
well, that's a whole discussion to be had. You're right. You're right. Absolutely, yeah. So what we want is fellow citizens to be able to civilized manner put our will forward into our true representatives and let them act on our behalf. So the whole incentive structure changes, because our independent representatives are no longer able to hide behind parties. They are directly accountable to us. We can either re-vote them in or vote somebody else in and get them out. Right. So there is a system that's being proposed. Now, let's kind of come back to the current system and the flows of the current system. Well, at the moment, the big money has captured the political system through parties. Parties are perfect hosts for the money.
Well, and you see that especially too. I'm in Michigan. I'm in the Michigan area, right? And through Act Blue and a lot of these other things, and the Michigan GOP is one of the weakest in the country. But like they get outraised by money with dark money, like 11-1. So there was a guy in town who was running for state senate, Jason Tooney, and I gave his campaign a little bit of shit. Not in a nice way, but I was like, you guys need to run some ads. And they didn't. And the other team's getting the message out. But when you have that dissonance there where the money is not even, the money should be almost even, you would think, right?
Yeah.
Maybe put a platform in there, say each campaign can only raise XYZ so that money is not dictating every election.
Well, what you've got is Citizens United. So your highest court has decided that you can't restrict people putting money in. That's fine. That's not for us to criticized. That's judges sitting there and deciding. Now,
right, based on law or whatever.
Yeah, correct. Well, I'm yes, with a hesitation, yes.
Sometimes,
with a
yes.
hesitation,
Yes.
yeah, sort of, yes, yeah. So we'll come back to that. But let me say this: in the book, what I propose is this: democracy is a precious thing, only second maybe to subsistence, to food and drink. Because without democracy, one way or another, we will drift into dictatorships.
And tyranny, yeah. 100%.
Exactly. So democracy is a critical infrastructure. And what I propose, even under the current system, let aside the proposed more democratic system that without parties, partyless democracy, even in this system, if I'm donating $500, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever the limit is, whatever is deemed to be normal, is participation in a process, participation in democracy. When somebody donates million, 5 million, 100 million, 300 million, that cannot be participation. That's outright buying influence.
Correct.
Nobody gives that kind of money for
free.
Participation. Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing comes free. There's no such a thing as free lunch here, my friend.
Right.
So that is for... Yeah. So how do we deal with that? Well, let's deal with it with a democracy tax. Why don't we tax that? We tax everything else. You earn an income. Do you pay income tax?
Fortunately.
Well, yeah. Well, what is the justification for that? Well, you get roads.
I don't know.
Get
I still haven't gotten a good explanation for that.
Not a good explanation.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Not a
good explanation. But there's a justification for it,
right.
and that justification applies to contribution into democracy. So what we want is true democracy, not distorted democracy.
Right.
So
the idea of choice, actual choice.
Correct. Exactly. So let's tax that disproportionate influence and use that money solemnly to level the playing field. You know, when we said we're going to have a local without the party representatives.
Yeah, it'd be expensive.
Well, let's use that money. Yeah, but let's use some of that money to level the playing field. Let's have a state provide free or subsidized, media access.
Right. Well, I've been saying that, the Democrats have been saying for years about they want, don't want to require ID at the ballot box because it's considered racist or something to them. But at the end of the day, it's like you got to show an ID to do anything else.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. I mean, yeah, look, I mean, like I've said earlier, even the Democrats or people who vote for Democrats don't agree with everything the Democrats do because they bundle
stick together a little bit better than the GOP, though. But...
Yeah, but our objective is beyond parties. We've gone back to the founding fathers who dreaded political parties.
They did.
Yeah, and so what we need to do, we need to work towards a better representation. And that better representation will then work in the best interest of the public, best interest of the country. Now, we've in Western democracies, our living standards has been getting worse and worse and worse over the years.
Absolutely.
Now we can blame
the more
it.
Government there is, the worse our standard of living gets.
Exactly, but
it's
your tax
like the Department of Education. People they're like, well, why would you get rid of the Department of Education? Well, since the Department of Education came into play in the United States, it has seen nothing but decline of education scores on our kids. And it's like, that's the biggest argument I've ever heard to get rid of the damn thing, because we spend more per student and we get less out of it.
Yeah. Well, the wider point, I suppose, is this. the wider point, and I'm not disagreeing with you on that point, by the way, but the wider point that I would like to make is this. When the government itself is captured through parties, let's take Democrats. Let's say they get money from this person, or this corporation, or this special interest group. And most of the time, these are not in the best interest of the American people or the America as a country, because people are getting poorer, infrastructure is crumbling. When you see some places like China, everything is brand spanking new, and whether it's airports, whether it's the bridges, whether it's the roads, you name it. So we know system hasn't worked for the Americans as the people, and hasn't worked for the Brits as the people. So where is all these tax dollars going? What is happening with this money? You're collecting all that money, and where is it all going? We're supposed to be richest, America is the biggest economy in the world, and Britain is in the top 5, top 6. So where is it going? We're collecting all these tax dollars. Where is that money going? And
Illegal
it's
immigrants.
unfortunately, yeah. Well, fair point. There is, that's got to be opened up. It
does, yeah.
That's got to be opened up. But let me come on to that. But what we have, as we've said earlier, the party system has been captured through big money. And what they do, they decide which candidates advance and which candidates are kind of kept out. You work against the system, they leave you out. That's as simple as that. So, but the problem doesn't stop there, Drew. The problem continues into other organs. It's a bit like a tumor. It's not just in executive or and this is successive governments. If you take the wars, it happened under Clinton, under Obama, under Biden, and it still continues. Trump is the only one that said we're not going to get entangled in foreign wars. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in one. I'm not going to go into details of why whether it's necessary or not. But the problem is, we are not just captured by money in our government. That effect has worked into the media, because the government has made laws that enable media concentration. So the media in US is now owned by 6 people or 6 families or whatever, corporations, whatever you name it. And guess what? They're part of the ruling elite, the billionaire class. And it's no longer the fourth estate. It's no longer holding power to account. In fact, it's kind of working alongside the power. It's partisan media. Now, you've mentioned education. It's gone into that. All the way to Koch brothers, the money invested in education have turned them into obedient citizens, not critical thinkers. It's people like you who getting the message out and saying to people, think critically.
I'm just one of those guys where I like to have conversations with anybody.
Yeah.
I could sit down and talk to anybody. But I wanted to ask you this, because because you have an interesting background, right? So you're a serial entrepreneur. You're out there, right, making businesses and whatnot. Now, I know a lot of guys like you. And tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. A lot of those guys, like yourself, I'm guessing, are very process-oriented. They look at the whole process as a whole, and they break it down. I'm guessing you did that, and you took that same thing to government. How did you make that jump from serial entrepreneur to politics? Again, excellent question. And you're right, because when you run businesses, when you analyze businesses, if you want different outcomes, you can't just change people and expect different outcomes. You've really got to change processes. You've got to really improve the systems. You've got to change the incentives to get different outcomes.
So if you take a sales representative, if you just pay that person a salary, he's going to do the bare minimum necessary. But if you put him on an incentive of commission, he's going to, you bet he's going to work his bottom out, and he's going to deliver the results. So you need to change incentives.
Like that, there's a $100 bill in the corner, they'll swing a chair for it.
Exactly. So you've got to change the systems. You've got to change the structures. And you're 100% right. As an entrepreneur, you look at the democracy, and I voted.
You go, this process is fucked.
Unfortunately, yeah. And so you sit back and say, well, hang on a minute. As an individual, I need to do something for this great country that did all that for me. I am where I am because of my schooling, because of my education, and forever for the rest of my life, I'm indebted to this country for providing that education to me, for critically teaching me and giving me the opportunity to be where I am today. So I felt obliged after a certain point to put something back into the community beyond providing jobs and beyond contributing to the economy through my taxes and so on and so forth. So hence I've got on to writing this book, that I feel that it's something that will open up a wider debate and will be good for the Western civilization and for the rest of the world to have a better representation, because our forefathers have fought hard to leave us this system, but it's slipping off of our fingers.
It's like they said with Ben Franklin when he's walking out from, they just, wrote all the laws, the Constitution, and the lady says, so what did you work on today, Mr. Franklin? And she says, well, ma'am, a republic if you can keep it.
Yeah, exactly. If we can keep it. Exactly. Exactly. So what had happened over the years, over the decades, the media concentration media is no longer the fourth estate. There's exceptions, don't get me wrong. I'm not brushing with a broad brush everything in one hit. But predominantly, mainstream media and even the social media, which is, again, mainstream now because they're owned by a bunch of billionaires as well, right, whether it's the Musks or Zuckerbergs or whoever else, they decide which narratives, which points and policies are brought forward and which are expressed. So people on the street are ending up debating the narrative that media creates.
And they just regurgitate it, regardless if it's true.
Exactly.
They just repeat it.
Exactly. And what's kept repeated, it becomes part of us. We start debating that. We start discussing that. So when we're at a soccer match or a football match or somewhere else or in a pub having a drink, what will we do? What's on the tabloids? What's on the newspaper? What's on the TV screens? What we've seen on the internet? These are the things that we discuss. And this is where we've got to be careful. We've got to be careful not to fall for the narrative being created by the elite. Let's go back to the basics. Our basics are, we've got a great democracy across the pond here in UK and the US. It's precious. We've got to look after it, and we've got to be fair. Yes, there is problems. Every nation needs its borders controlled. We have an immigration problem in the UK as well.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Sure.
So like with the immigration in the UK, you're down the middle, and I feel like you'll give it to me straight. Is the immigration problem really as bad as they say it is? In terms, you hear people say that, UK is being invaded by Muslims and all this different shit, right? And I'm just curious, how accurate is it? Are you guys really losing your culture like they are claiming? Is it...
Right. Okay. Again, a great and practical question. and I'm not a politician, so I'm going to give it as it is. So, is there a immigration problem in the UK? Yes, there is. Is there an integration problem? Yes, there is. There is some aspects of the Muslim community that finds it very difficult to integrate into the Western culture. But I do not believe that we can brush a whole belief or a whole nation or whole community with one broad brush. Now, I want to draw some parallels. Recently, in Lebanon, there was an IDF soldier that was smashing the statue of Jesus. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
We can turn around and say, well, all Jewish people are like this. That's not the case.
Right.
You know, we've got to be measured in our approach. So yes, there is an integration problem because we've got people from war-torn countries, Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Somalia and other places, and Afghanistan, for instance.
And they have their own immigration issues there too, because that's where a lot of the Mossad recruited a lot of these guys for, Operation Epic Fury, was because they had all these, 14 million refugees in there, and they had no money. They're poor, and they said, "Hey, for $20 a day, just tell me where these guys are." And they're like, "Okay."
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, I mean, we're only a nation of 60, 70 million people here. Not, so we're not a massive country. We're an island, but we're a proud island, and we have had integration. Now, America was built on wave of immigration. Whether it was the English, whether it was the Irish that was discriminated against for so many years, but they became integral part of the American community. Yeah. So here we have had a lot of immigration, and people have got to sympathize with the ordinary citizens seeing people from different culture in such a mass, such a big numbers. But if we only deal with the symptoms, whether it's the cost of immigration, whatever it is, we're spending billions on asylum seekers and whatever it is. It's massive. And our health service is crumbling. So as an immigrant, second generation or first generation immigrant kid, we have got to deal with this immigration problem,
right?
Especially the illegal immigration.
Yep, exactly. Come in the front door, or don't come at all. That's my thing.
Exactly.
If you come in the front door, you deserve all the same perks that every American gets.
Yes. So, but here is the part that I want to get across as well. We need to not just deal with symptoms. We need to look at the root causes. Now, if you have a pain in your arm or in your knee or whatever it is, and if you keep taking painkillers to suppress it without looking at the root causes of it, whether it's a damaged ligament, whether it's a torn muscle, whatever it is, you need imaging. You need to diagnose it correctly,
right,
so you can remedy it correctly. Now, let's look at the root causes of the immigration into Europe.
You see, a lot of it would be the corrupt countries that they're coming from, right? Instead of fixing the problem in their own countries, they come here, and it's like
that is certainly one part of it.
But I do think some of that goes with U.S. leadership too. You actually have President Trump now, who's willing to correct some of these dictators that treat their people like shit, so that these people can stay there and they're not being persecuted. Like 40 million dead in Iran of people just protesting the government.
40,000 people years old, aren't we, in these demonstrations? 40,000.
Yeah, nuts.
Yeah. Correct.
It's a tragedy. It's an atrocity.
Absolutely correct. But consider this for a second. Libya was a very rich country under Gaddafi. Iraq
what happened to Gaddafi was awful. Like, don't get me started. I just think that's so terrible.
Look, I mean, I've got no sympathy for the dictators,
right,
or the mullahs, or the clerics. I've got no sympathy for those people.
I don't either.
I'm secular. Yeah, I'm secular. I'm democratic. and that's what the system should be.
Right.
But if we look at different cultures, different regimes, different systems, Syria, we've got million people in Germany. We've got over 3 million Syrians in Turkey. So that's a huge, huge numbers to assimilate into the society. But there was anywhere near such immigration before the war in Syria. Now, who is responsible for the war in Syria? Well, unfortunately, my ethnic country, Turkey, your country, US, Israel, and between them, they've got rid of Assad for whatever reason. I'm not debating whether he was a good guy or a bad guy. That's not the point. The point is...
But the guy that they replaced Bashar al-Assad with is like a monster.
But he was a most wanted terrorist.
Yeah, he was a terrorist.
He was a most wanted terrorist, correct. So the point is, we are left... You asked me about immigration in UK. How bad is it? Well, it's bad because we've got all these people that we've got to kind of assimilate into the community. But
and they don't assimilate.
But this is it. There's cultural differences.
Right.
There's cultural differences. It's not easy. It's not easy for if I said to you, look, just for argument's sake, reverse the roles and say, okay, you've ended up in Saudi Arabia and you've got to assimilate into that country and go to mosque and pray 5 times a day and whatever it is, you're going to find that difficult.
Right.
So it's difficult for those people. But the problem is, why are these people on a mass exodus? Why are they leaving their countries, whereas they didn't before?
Right.
Now, American continent is different to the European and
Middle East.
East.
The United States offering gift cards and thousands of dollars and free phones and place to live and health care,
That's got to be questioned. That's got to be questioned. And there is, like we've said, look, any corruption by anybody, any fraud by anybody, has got to be investigated and sorted. The problem is consistency. We've got to be consistent in where our tax dollars are going.
Yeah.
Is it going in foreign aid? Well, how much was spent? Let's say the corruption amounts to 500 million or a million, whatever it is, by these immigrants. We've sent nearly 200 billion to Ukraine.
Right.
That money is not going to come back.
No.
Where did that money come from?
And you
it's your
can't
tax
audit
dollars.
it. And we can't audit it.
No.
We have no
Exactly.
idea where that money is. It could have went to terrorism for all we know.
But they've sold the weapons. They have actually sold on the weapons that they got from America.
Really?
And absolutely. There's been so much corruption, they've got rid of people. So, we've got to question every level of waste, every level of corruption. But let's not be pitted against one another, one religion against another, or one community against another community, or left against right and right against left. Let's not point fingers at each other, and let's point finger upwards and say, who is pulling the strings?
Yeah. Who's pulling the strings when it's not God?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to see each other as fellow citizens. Yes, we need border controls, but at the same time, we've got to question the geopolitics of destroying homes, destroying countries, because Iraq, perfect example. There was no weapons of mass destruction.
No, there was not.
No. And there was 1 million people demonstrating, British people in London and across the world. And they said, no, we want to see evidence. But guess what? The governments are more accountable to the military-industrial complex than to the people. So what happens? This military-industrial complex needs to make money. How are they going to make money? They need to sell all these weapons. They need to use it. What are they going to do with that stockpile? They've got to get it out there. They've got to get it used. And so they can get new stuff, new stock, new inventory, better stuff. And guess what? All that billions that flow out come back to the military-industrial complex.
Right.
And it's not just military-industrial complex. Whether it's the big pharma, whether it's special interest groups, it's this revolving doors. And people are lining their pockets up, nobody's held accountable.
Do you
no
think
leaders are
these
held
big
accountable.
lobbyist companies, these big lobbyists, do you think that they should have a place in American society, like as the way that they're working now, or in a different way?
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, the lobbying is done by the people with deep pockets and with influence. Is that in the best interest of you and I and great American people, or is it in the best interest of somebody else? Anything that's in the best interest of American people, amen, let's go with that. But anything that's in the interest of foreign nations or corporations, no, we should question that. And the system should be, system should be accountable to the people, because ultimately it's the people's tax dollars that fill the coffers of the government.
Agree.
Where is that money coming from? It's from the tax dollars that Americans as individuals pay. And guess what? A big proportion of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. We have,
or on credit cards.
Exactly.
A crazy amount.
Exactly. How long is that sustainable? What are we leaving for the next generation? We need the system to be more accountable. We need to, yes, look, we can have our political opinions. We can be in one camp or another. But what's important is to stop pointing finger at one another and seeing the real enemy that's pulling all the strings behind the scenes. That's the essence of the book that I've written. Yes, we're going to have differences. We're going to agree on some points. We're going to disagree on others. Right. Let's agree to disagree on some points.
Right.
That's a civilized way of doing it.
And work together on what we do agree with. Instead
Absolutely.
of being like, I'm not going to do anything with them because they support the other party. Like we were saying before, people talk about the other party like if they win, it's going to be apocalypse. The apocalypse.
Yes.
The world's over. It's done. And so people sit there and they're like, okay, Donald Trump's Hitler. Kamala Harris is retarded, who's going to start World War III. And it's all just craziness. Now, I don't think, but look at what you were saying about the political process when the Democrats didn't even have a primary once Joe Biden walked out, got kicked out, whatever you want to call it. Once he's gone,
yep.
They just coordinated Kamala Harris. And that's kind of part of the problem there, is that you get people like her that nobody likes, nobody wants,
yeah.
and they jam it down our throat. Like you said, that artificial choice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, look, I can't help but to say I agree with most people who say Kamala Harris is not the sharpest tool out of the box. So I'm sure they could have done better. And Joe Biden, he was shaking hands with ghosts. I mean, come on. America could do better.
Yeah.
It's a great nation. We could do with better leaders. We deserve better leaders. We deserve better systems.
I agree.
So we need to do our part as citizens to make sure that we are making a change and we're making a difference. Now, it's time that we, coming up to the 250th anniversary of American democracy, we've just got to question representation itself and say, can we be true to the founding fathers and their dreams and have a better system, better representation? And if we can start getting true representation, then some of these geopolitical issues will be pushed aside, because some of these wars are all about oil. We were in Iraq and Syria for oil. That money doesn't benefit us. It benefits BP, it benefits Shell, ExxonMobil, and we've got the use of those oil fields, and at what cost? Probably up to 1 million Iraqis lost lives. So many young American sons and daughters have lost their life,
Right. Or
like
horribly injured and,
horribly injured, and state have ignored them. All those patriotic people that fought for their own country, they were ordered to go and do a job, and they did it, whether they agreed or not, but they're not being looked after because there are so many of those people that are not living a comfortable life. Unfortunately not. Some of them
how is free speech in the UK? I apologize, but I wanted to get this question. No. So I'm hearing things where people are getting arrested in the UK for putting memes up that might have incited violence, but it's nothing that would be like like they were funny. A lot of them were funny, and it'd be like, okay, like men in women's bathrooms, maybe not a good idea. And it'd be like, you're inciting violence. But I saw one the other day where a World War II veteran was holding up a UK flag and he was arrested. And I just thought, what a disgrace to the people that fought. And you hear, there was that video a while ago where they had another World War II veteran that said that the fight wasn't worth it, not for what the UK has turned into. Do you feel those sentiments at all, or is that kind of intense?
No, that is fairly accurate. That is fairly accurate. Look, I mean, we're supposed to be leaders of free speech. We're supposed to have free speech, but the problem is that governments under pressure, Keir Starmer under pressure, they prescribed a certain group as being a terrorist group because they've sprayed paint onto some sort of a aeroplane or something, and whatever it is. When you have demonstrations, there's always going to be in the margins some people that's going to misbehave.
Right.
The problem is about proportionality. And now these veterans, if they say to, if they hold a placard saying I stand against genocide or ethnic cleansing or whatever it is, they get arrested because it's against the law. What they do with them, I don't know. But again, the High Court has basically concluded that that was not legal. The government is going to appeal against it. So it's a bit of a mess, but it comes back to...
So where did the meme thing come from? Did that come from Keir Starmer's government, or was that...
Well, look, the Keir Starmer's government is equally under influence of its funding. Whoever funds the Keir Starmer came through the ranks because of all that money that supported him.
Right.
And same for the opposition leader. I mean, Boris Johnson, he had a massive mandate. He won a great election result. And then the party had got rid of him. Yeah. And then we had Liz Truss, we had another one, and we had...
Liz Truss lasted like a day, didn't she?
Yeah, she had a mini budget that's blown up in her face.
Yeah.
People didn't want it. And people wanted somebody like Rishi Sunak, which he messed up the system. He's lost billions in this furlough scheme during the COVID and what have you. So the bottom line is we are losing our free speech because our government hasn't got the backbone and is bowing to the powers that want certain items being banned. And they're doing it.
Well,
and
a lot of people made the argument in the States, too, that the reason Keir Starmer did that is because of the influx of Muslim immigrants. So when you see somebody attack Iran, a lot of people argued that he didn't want the Muslim population to, go crazy.
Well, look, I mean, this goes back to the point we made earlier, and you've got a fair point there. The point that I've made is this: parties bundle together various issues, often unrelated. So Labour Party is supposed to be a working class party. That's the roots of the Labour Party. It's representing the trade unions and the working class. Conservatives represents the business and the upper class. But over time, trade unions has disappeared. Guess what? All our jobs have gone over to Far East into China, excuse my language, but who fucked up the manufacturing industries? We did.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. We did.
Hey, we did in the United States too, though. To be fair, we did in the States too. We got hooked on, we got hooked on those cheap Chinese goods.
Well, exactly. But look, let's be fair on ourselves. As consumers, you want the cheaper goods, but companies were attracted to that cheaper labor.
Agree.
And capital recognizes no borders.
Agree.
Capital is not native to America, to UK, to any country. We have a great company, Dyson. They're in Malaysia now. You have Apple making their product in China and where else. So Adidas making their shoes in Bangladesh or wherever it is, or Nikes. So the capital has no boundaries. They don't have a nationality. The capital just goes where it can make money. So all those jobs had went abroad. So when I say the political parties bundle together different issues, that's what I mean. Labour Party has a significant Muslim ethnic population that supports them, MPs, local councillors, and you name it. So party has to take account of that. Otherwise, it runs the risk of losing elections or alienating them. So yes, that plays a factor, but that is a separate issue to the recent illegal immigrants that don't have a status, don't have a voting thing. We are now going back to the British Empire, where they had conquered all the way from States, Canada, to all the way to India and Pakistan and what have you. So, and Africa. So under those empire, we've had migration, because the problem is never contained to one area. You go and take over a geography and it becomes your subjects, and these people move. So, you take it from the slave trade all the way to colonization. We have 6% of population, whether it's Hindus, Muslims, or whatever it is, from these countries that emigrated in. So we need to assimilate that into the thing, and they have a say in the Labour Party. So Keir Starmer has to take that into account, rightly or wrongly, but they have to take that voter base into account. Now, some of those policies I radically disagree with. Now, we can't sweep a whole ethnic background or whole ethnicity with one wide brush. We cannot do that. But there's elements that are problematic in terms of integration, in terms of Western values, and we've got to call it spade a spade. And there is a problem. There's a problem we need to deal with, but we also need to go back to the root causes. Why did Syria war happen to lead to all these people flooding in? Why did Afghanistan war happen? Why did Syria, Libya happen? And, why do we end up with all these people leaving their homes? Because anybody
we shelled them to death. We destroyed all their homes. They had nowhere to live.
But that's the problem. So we've got to... But we've got to look at the geopolitics. But we didn't do that in the best interest of you or I.
No.
We did it in the best interest of the oil companies, defense companies,
correct,
special interest groups.
Yep.
So, and then as public, we citizens are expected to deal with that problem. It's a problem on schooling. It's a problem on health. It's a problem on housing. It's a real problem. These people have got, and that's not me being anti-Muslim or being anti-immigrant or whatever it is, but reality is reality.
Right.
There's this, it's difficult to deal with such mass migration, regardless of what the causes were. But causes are, as Britain, we have participated in most of these wars. There might be a justification for the wars, but certainly for Syria, for Iraq, it was what we call sex up dossier for Iraq. There was no weapons of mass destruction. It came to be. I mean, there are people, weapons inspectors like Scott Ritter, had said, American guy, had said that I was in the field in Iraq and I've accounted for 98% of these weapons that's been destroyed because we gave it to them. We have the fucking serial numbers. Sorry, delete that bit off.
You're fine.
Delete that bit off.
I can swear like a trucker on this side, though. It's all good. But that is all the time that we have. I did follow you on Twitter. I will put a link up to your book and everything so everybody can get a chance to look at that. I appreciate you coming on, taking your Saturday to come hang out with me.
My pleasure.
And it was a great talking with you. Great conversation. Very interesting stuff.
Likewise. Drew, been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
You take care. Send me the link and I'll share it on my socials as well.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks again for coming on. You the man.
You take care.
Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
All right. So we just had Metin Pekin. Like I said, I'm going to share his link to his book, Breaking Democracy's Chains. That will be up in the links and everything else. We're going to get that out. We'll see you next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're supposed to have a very big and important guest on next week. If you know, you know. But it's going to be a great show next week as well. We're supposed to have Mike Lindell on. So check that out next Saturday, 11 a.m. I love you all. Keep the faith. God bless. And get out there and talk shit to a liberal today. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.